My name is Roodman. I'm a professor at Stanford University in the Department of Particle Physics and Astrophysics. I study particle physics and a little bit of astrophysics. So I went to Parkway West Senior High, graduated in 1981. I guess before that I went to Parkway South Junior, and then before that Piermont Elementary. I think I started in second grade. Parkway West was a great place for me. There were good friends, classes that were interesting, challenging, teachers that were really caring. I remember it as a happy time. Mrs. Temkin in 10th grade, Mrs. Underwood in 11th, and Dr. Buss for calculus in 12th grade, and they were all terrific. Other teachers I remember well. In history, there was Mr. Klein, who I had twice, and if anyone who had him will certainly remember him because he was quite a character. Had a stylish way of moving around the classroom and asking questions. I distinctly remember meeting someone in college who had also gone to Parkway West. And the first thing I asked them was, can you do an imitation of Mr. Klein? And whoever it was actually did a good one. So I thought, okay, this is an all right person to have such an imitation. In English, I especially remember Mrs. Moskowitz, my senior year, who actually, I think in high school was really one of my favorite teachers. Other teachers I remember were chemistry, Mrs. Ratcliffe, who I had twice. As I recall, she used to wear slippers, yellow slippers to class most times, well, if it wasn't too cold. And then one more teacher I remember is Mr. Schaefer, who I had for speech and debate. He was an interesting character, and I tried to tell people at the time that we didn't actually learn anything about speech or debate. He just talked for most of the class, and maybe we listened and tried to talk the same way he did, at least in style, if not content. I'm especially drawn back to my middle school math, middle school 8th grade and 9th grade math, and I had the same teacher both years, Mr. Rate. And up until that time, I think I was a pretty indifferent student. And something happened, and today I associate it very much with those two classes. So something happened at that point where I awoke to, scholastic endeavors. I awoke to the fact that I actually liked math a lot. I was good at it. And it was something that I, started to take seriously. And, whether it's the mists of all those years, it's hard to associate exactly what, causes a sort of immature middle schooler to change. But today I associate it with those classes. And I can see in my mind's eye what Mr. Rate talking to us in those two courses. And my recollection is that, and especially in geometry in 9th grade, that not many of the other kids in the class really enjoyed geometry. And it was painful for them. But for me, it was just heaven. I loved it. And I remember him as a really caring teacher who really took the time with his students and really seemed to care, about whether we learned geometry or not. And from that point, I felt like I awoke to math and then to science. And it's important for academics what your pedigree is, where you came from, who you studied with, and who your professors were. And for me, I view actually Parkway schools as part of that pedigree. I really got a great training. And for me, I feel like it started then in middle school math in Mr. Rate's class. In terms of words of encouragement for current graduates, I don't know. That's a hard one. Actually, I should say I had the pleasure of visiting Parkway West Senior High yesterday. The principal, Mrs. Plunkett, took me around, introduced me to a number of teachers, interrupted a few classes. I had a chance to talk to a few students. So, I don't know. I guess what I told them in a couple of the science classes, their teachers might not have wanted me to say this, but was that sometimes high school level science is not as exciting as what you learn later on. You're learning the fundamentals, and sometimes the fundamentals are not quite as mind-blowing or exciting as what you might learn later on. So I urge them to stick with it. And if they did, science would get interesting, and the real interest comes when you're studying things or asking questions where the answer is not in the back of the book. And that's the big difference in learning about science versus doing science. So if you do it, you don't know the answers. And so that brings me back to what I do, which mostly is physics research. So I've had a lot of fun in my career so far studying the difference between matter and antimatter. And the most excitement I've had in that career are the few times, it takes a long time to get there, but the few times where the measurements we were making were of things we had no idea what the answer was going to be. Often we had some expectation about what it should be if certain theories were correct, but we didn't know. And the way we did these measurements, we would do most of the preparatory work, maybe for 6 months or even a year, and we do it in such a way that we didn't know what the result was going to be until the very end. This is called the blind analysis technique. It's usual in biomedical science, but in physics, it's actually not. It was not the norm. And so when we finally took away the blind part of the analysis and looked at what nature had to tell us, those were one of the exciting times in my career. And it's hard in science to convey that sort of excitement to people, but it's actually real.